Well, Alex Salmond joins us now live from London. He is a former First Minister of Scotland. Alex, thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme. A huge challenge for Humza Yousaf ahead. It should be a time of celebration, but he is facing a massive task because so many key areas in Scotland seem to have gone backwards under the SNP in the last 10 years, and yet he's the continuity candidate. So how does he balance continuity with change?
Well, firstly, let's celebrate the fact that Humza Yousaf is not just a leader, a Muslim leader of a political party. He's the first Muslim leader of a Western country, and that's not an inconsiderable thing. And it's a tribute to the diversity of Scotland that has happened. So that's a matter for celebration. He does have certain huge challenges, which can be summed up as he has to unite his party. He's got to unite the national movement, which has been fractured in Scotland. And thirdly, of course, he's got to restore the SNP's hard-won reputation for competence in government. If I could just correct you, it's not over the last 10 years, it's much more recent that the SNP's reputation for competence has been slipping, the last 2 or 3 years, perhaps.
Well, we've seen NHS figures in Scotland. We understand they're under extreme pressure. Waiting lists are up. The education system, which Nicola Sturgeon said would be her legacy, is in sharp decline. Policing is in trouble as well. I mean, these are all huge tasks that he has to try to fix, and he has to do it without the help of Kate Forbes, who stood down today from Scottish Government, and she clearly had a considerable support amongst grassroots members. So how much harder is his task now that she has decided not to continue?
Well, to take your 2 points, I mean, you're quite right. I mean, Nicola Sturgeon had substantial qualities as a politician, but running an efficient government wasn't one of them. And you've listed some of the criticisms that have been made. And for the first time, that confidence in the SNP as a better administration than the other parties is starting to slip. It should be said that all things are relative. I mean, compared to the situation at Westminster, the administration of Scotland is a sea of calm compared to the turmoil and confusion that we've had in the Tory party at Westminster. But your point about Kate Forbes is a very important one. I mean, Kate, the result in the election was eventually 52% for Humza Yousaf and 48% to Kate Forbes. You would have thought that the very first thing that Humza Yousaf would have done was to make sure they got Kate Forbes and her supporters in the tent. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to do that. He made a pretty derisory offer of a demotion to her, which she quite legitimately turned down. And, you know, obviously it's early days, but I mean, Humza today has really failed the first test of leadership, which is to unite your own party.
And you mentioned Westminster, and I take the point about the chaos that's been taking place there of late. But what would you say in response to those who criticise the SNP for having a default position of blaming Westminster for when things don't go quite right in Scotland, rather than getting on with the business of delivering for Scotland themselves?
Well, obviously, I lead a rival political party, the Alpha Party, so I've got no brief to defend the SNP, and there's no question that the SNP have built up a very hard-won reputation for competence in government, and that reputation has been dissipated, largely, I think, not because of the pursuit of independence, which was not one of Nicola Sturgeon's strengths, but because she's taken the party into the government down areas like self-identification, transgender reform, which are difficult, controversial issues, and which, quite frankly, she was totally incapable of explaining. Now, if somebody as gifted a communicator as Nicola Sturgeon can't explain a policy to people's satisfaction, then there's probably something wrong with the policy. And if I had to make one piece of advice to Humza Yousaf as he starts out in his term of office, then for goodness sake, spend less time talking about transgender self-identification and more times talking about self-determination for Scotland, for the nation of Scotland. That's what people expect from a national party.
Well, absolutely. And how does he solve that problem? How do the SNP solve that problem of independent, Alex? Because that's something that you strove for throughout your political career, and it seems no closer independence right now than it did when you had the referendum back in 2014.
Yes, but I mean, obviously, when we started that referendum campaign, support for Scottish independence was below 30%. even though it's been stalling recently, it's still at 47%. That's a high level. It's more even than the referendum of 2014. So you have to, if you want to increase the support for independence, you have to find a strategy for getting to independence. Now, one of the recommendations that were made by the other two candidates in the leadership contest, and I think Humza Yousaf would be well advised to take this up, was to have an independence convention to reunite the national movement, to invite political parties like Alapa, the Scottish Socialist Party, and others who believe in independence into the same tent, along with the whole variety of grassroots pressure groups and think tanks who are also arguing for independence. So get the independence forces together and united so that we can collectively take on the Westminster establishment. If you want to beat the London establishment, your first job is to unite Scotland.
And as leader of the Alba Party, I'm sure you would be more than happy to sit on that panel. Alex, we really thank you for coming on TRT World. Appreciate you giving us your thoughts on the news. Cheers.
A pleasure. Thank you.